Hi, I'm Addison Hart. This is my presentation on sustainable public transportation and how local municipalities can reduce greenhouse gases. This is for Planning Tools and Techniques 352 at UMass Amherst. Let's get right into it. The first thing that local municipalities can do is build bike paths and encourage more bike lanes. The large benefit of this is obviously the difference between a bike and a car. Bikes do not produce greenhouse gases, and they are also far more efficient in terms of storage. Obviously, you need a whole garage for a car, you don't need it for a bike. It's also good for the public health. People riding bikes is good cardio. And obviously, when you're considering a certain policy for a municipality, you got to consider other things that'll impact. So, even though this is focused on greenhouse gases, considering the other benefits and negatives of adding bike lanes and paths should all be considered. So, another benefit of this is that bikes are not as expensive as cars. So more people can have them, more people can ride them, and it's better at keeping wealth equity in mind. Also, noise pollution is a big factor. So if you live in a very dense area, you'll be up late at night because there are lots of cars outside your window, whereas bikes obviously produce way less noise. Not saying that cars will totally go away, but having more bikes means less noise. Moving on, we got public transit. I've got a more detailed slide coming up, but I just want to touch on a couple, such as the PVTA, which is the local bus system here in the Pioneer Valley. Super useful, uh, not expensive at all. It's free during certain months, and it's used by almost everyone because it's just a great way for college students to get to everywhere they want to go without needing a car, which is great for reducing greenhouse gas emissions, obviously, because a bus can hold way more people, and if 40 people on a bus where you get into their each individual 40 cars, that's way more space on the road, and that's 40 times the greenhouse emissions, roughly. Obviously, one bus produces more than the car, but you get what I mean. All right, to get a little more in depth about the benefits, obviously public transit, less cars. That's just the straight up benefit that is the most prevalent for greenhouse gases. Again, affordability is also a large benefit here because generally it's free for college students, free for people with disabilities, veterans, etc. Lots of groups can ride on the bus for a lot cheaper, which is good because again we're keeping equity in mind here because we're even though we're focusing on greenhouse gases, we got to see how public transit will impact other fields. It's also safer. Obviously, on a train, you're not going to get into an accident if the train breaks down. They've got procedures for that. More importantly, what I'm really trying to get at here is if you're on a bus as opposed to on a car on the highway, the speed difference is very important. 20, 30, 40 miles an hour is so much more different than 60, 70, and 80. So if you're in a bus, the chance of like a fatal car collision or just general road crash is much, much lower. So public safety is, again, much more, yeah, everything's a lot more safer if people are in buses, to be blunt. I want to talk about the T briefly, specifically the subway in Boston. As a non Boston resident, obviously, if someone knows more about this or someone who has lived there, I might not be totally right about all of this, but this is what I've got from a little bit of research. So, obviously, the pro at the top of the list here is that it's inexpensive, as all public transportation should be. So, everyone living in the city, no matter how much they make, everyone can take the bus, everyone can take the T, etc. It's sustainable. The MBTA, and this isn't just for the subway, but the MBTA has lots of initiatives in place. So they've replaced some of their buses with electric ones, and I know they have plans to eventually make it completely green. I'm fairly certain they already are using completely renewable energy, but moving on to more electric buses is also good. Obviously, this assignment is not just about how everyone should go from a gas car to an electric car, but I think in the context of future planning, it is a little bit important. Moving on to higher density, again, more people can fit on it. And this is actually a great way for me to segue into the cons of the T, which is that it's very crowded. So obviously, if you've got something so available to everyone, it's going to get used. Kind of like how the more lanes you build on the highway, the more cars there are. I think this is just a product of so much demand, and I don't know if we'll ever have enough supply to meet it, but it's important to try. Another thing could be hygiene and or privacy issues. Obviously, this is more of a case-by-case basis and not as important as crowding or something that you can measure a little more. but it could be something that could discourage someone from taking public transportation and using their car instead. However, it's worth noting that if you're in rush hour and you're worried about the T being crowded and you want to use your car, it's probably going to be much worse. So, rush hour is rush hour, no matter what sort of form of transportation you use. Moving on, I want to talk about walkability, which is the best here for greenhouse gases because there just aren't any cars, at least in the context of this. Why drive your car to a supermarket when you can just walk? Another benefit of walkability is economic development because if you're focused so much on people going to these businesses that's within the area they can walk to, you're also going to focus on developing these areas, reinvesting, building more green infrastructure, etc. Another benefit, again, on going back on the public health, similar to the bikes, people are walking. They're not driving. They're not taking the bus. They're not using an electric scooter, etc. It's just better for everyone. And obviously, as a municipal government, the health of your citizens should be on your master plan. So, this is definitely something I wanted to briefly touch on. Additionally, walkability can promote culture and downtown character because a great example of this is Denver, Colorado. When I went there to visit my extended family, I was in the downtown and the sidewalks were very empty. Obviously, this isn't representative of the entire area of Denver because that would be a crazy claim to make as one person and not some larger agency that's viewing the entire city at a certain scale. But if your town or city is for commuters and you've just got people going there to work and they're going back to their hometown, you need to attract them by building more housing and making it so that when they're at these houses, they don't need to drive places. So having people out in the streets, whether it's at cafes or even just walking around, just builds downtown character. And again, that's an aspect of mental health because you feel better when you're walking, and if you see people outside having fun and maybe with live music, cafes, etc., it's better for you. Moving on, I wanted to touch on Franklin, Mass., which is where I'm from. It's also the least walkable town in all of Mass, according to a ranking, which I really do agree with. It's completely car centric. You have to drive everywhere, even for the most basic things. It's just not walkable at all. And I want to touch on this as sort of what can go wrong if your city isn't walkable. So there's no public transit. We do have a weird system with a bus, but that bus is from another county, or sorry, pardon, another town, and so it's not exactly there. We don't have bus stops. Yeah, I think you have to use an app. No one knows much about it, and as a result of that, there's no public transit. You have to have a car if you live in Franklin. Now, I live closer to the downtown area, so it is walkable, and I know that kind of contradicts what I just said, but I'm gonna get there. So the downtown district is economically not very strong. There aren't a lot of things that will reel people in, and it's mostly just small stores that, again, just are not attracting people to walk in the downtown area. The only time I've actually seen people walk in the downtown area is when we have festivals or some other actual reason to attract people. So to touch on another thing about the downtown is if you're standing in that photo and you turn 90 degrees to your right, there's the commuter rail. And one thing that Franklin wants to do is attract more people to the downtown area uh, through economic development and obviously making things more appealing. But an issue with this in walkability is that no one can walk to this downtown district. So everyone has to take their cars, which in turn leads to lots and lots and lots of greenhouse gases. If you don't live near the town common or really anywhere in Franklin aside from that, you must have a car to get to the downtown area. Additionally, the actual economic district, like the grocery stores, the larger corporations, etc., the sidewalks are not feasible. It is going to be a half hour to an hour walk if you really want to get to somewhere worth going in terms of daily needs, like a grocery or the doctor's office, etc. And some of those you can't even walk to at all. So lots of people in Franklin end up using cars, and by lots of I mean everyone, because it's more efficient and the town is not designed to be walkable. So greenhouse gases are a big issue if your town is not walkable. Moving on, transit focused development. So going back to Franklin for a little bit, the commuter rail, we do have an apartment building nearby. And credit where credit is due, it is walkable. However, this is a small minority in the over 30,000 population of Franklin. So building around transit is good for so many reasons because A, it encourages walkability because if you've already got the buildings and then you've also got the transit, why not also build a grocery store? I use grocery stores a lot because they're just a good example. But again, encouraging walkability by building near transit is good for many towns. It's something that Franklin doesn't really do aside from that one apartment building, but it provides more jobs, access to better life services. Again, you're walking, that's better for you. It's healthy. You're also using a bike or some other form of, physical activity to get yourself somewhere, which is good for you. It also reduces dependence on driving. And I think the key point of all of this is just alternatives to cars, because if your town is just completely car dependent, you are going to have a major issue with greenhouse gases because of traffic and congestion. All right. Finally, I want to talk on incentives, because why would developers build green? Why would they build stuff near transit? Aside from just plain money value, municipalities can encourage developers to build to their what they want through these different methods of incentives. One of these is a density bonus. So if you meet certain requirements, if you're more green, if you say, okay, I'll build like somewhere for people to park their bikes, etc., the town might allow you to add more density, which is good for you because it means you make more money from the perspective of a developer, and it's good for the town because density is better because it encourages walkability. Also, lighter standards if you meet, say, an affordable housing requirement or something with greenhouse. So, if your building is LEED certified, for instance, the town might say, okay, well, we'll lighten up on the standards a little bit and you can have a little more creative freedom in designing your building. Also, I'm just going to summarize the last two bullet points here into one. It's just tax breaks and other financial incentives. If you do a certain thing that the town wants, the town might give you a little bit of money off. They might charge you less in impact fees or other sorts of things like that. And I think that's generally going to sum this up. I just wanted to quickly touch again transit and transit oriented development. By building more transit, you're condensing people, which is good in terms of greenhouse gases. If you want to argue that it's bad in another way, that's fine, but this is focused on greenhouse gases. Additionally, with buses, it's safer and it's better for the environment. Walkability also focuses on this because you're cutting down the cars, and bike paths because, again, you're cutting down the cars, and people walking and people biking is both good for the environment and it's good for your citizens, which should be a feature of your master plan. I think that's going to generally sum it up. Thank you for watching and have a nice day.